So this is a continuation from a previous video about this aquaponics system. It's a self-contained cart. It has the fish tank in front here, which is a 55-gallon, and then in the back there is a 33-gallon, which occupies the same footprint but not the same height. So there's a gradient for the overflow water to drop into. This grow bed up here is approximately 54 inches long by approximately 24 inches wide. Some of that's taken up by this food grade liner, and of course the grow stones occupy a significant portion of the volume as well. That's one thing to look out for if you're using some type of grow stone. In this case I'm using expanded shale from Sunleaves Rocks. This particular type of media can absorb up to 38% of its total weight in water. So the first time you prime a system like this, you have to take into account the amount of water that's going to get absorbed by the media, and understand that, yeah, you probably did your calculations right on the height of the bell siphon and everything, but it may not be getting tripped because a lot of water is getting absorbed that first pass through. I've got some peppers, hot peppers, that we just recently transplanted here. This is a dual spectrum LED light, which I've turned off for this video because it's very, very bright. And it's full spectrum for veg and flowering phases. Let me go to the back here. You can see the 33-gallon tank. Height difference there, believe is about 15 inches, 12 to 15 inches roughly. You can see there's a standard Marineland Penguin dual filter there. That's just to help the tank get cycled. And then in the back there, you see what's called a Weir siphon. That's where the water drains from the grow bed. Coming back around front here, you can see the standpipe extends down below the base of the grow bed and tees into these two outlets here, and they of course drop the water into the main fish tank. It's good having two outlets like this. It provides more aeration for the water as it returns to the fish. And then here's the front of that Weir siphon, or they also call it an overflow box. You can get these on eBay for about $90 roughly. I'm going to come around to this side so you can see the Weir siphon a little more closely. You'll see that this top portion, where my finger's pointing right now, this has to get completely filled with water in order for the overflow box to work. So that's why they have this tubing connected there, and you can see there we've got a stopcock. At any time I can open that stopcock and basically just suck air through this hosing in order to remove air from the Weir siphon and have that completely filled with water. So I just monitor this and make sure that it's filled with water. It's been filled probably about a month to a month and a half as I've been cycling this tank, getting it ready for some tilapia, and I haven't seen the level drop. One other thing you need to watch out for when you're using a Weir siphon is occasionally this front area can get collected full of solids, and it'll block the flow of the Weir siphon, and you might wind up with some overflow and some flooding, which you want to watch out for. So if you need to, shut off the pump maybe on a weekly basis if you see any solids built up, and really clean that Weir siphon out, and if need be, refill the center with water by sucking the air out, just to make sure that keeps flowing. You can also make a DIY overflow siphon similar to this. I talk about this type of thing in a previous video. This can handle some overflow, so if your Weir siphon isn't working the greatest or plugs up a little bit, at least the room that your tank is in won't completely flood. So as you can see here, the pump is bringing the water up from the sump tank behind here. You can see down in there's a pump down at the bottom. That pump is a 16-watt pump. It's rated at approximately 300 gallons per minute. However, once you factor in the height of this grow bed, it's going to deliver roughly about 100 gallons per minute is what I've calculated. So with the volume of rocks in this grow bed occupying a lot of the volume, it only takes about 22 gallons worth of water to raise to the level where it trips the bell siphon and begins to drain the bed. The whole process on this system takes approximately 15 minutes, and with 88 gallons in the system between the fish tank and the sump tank, and with 22 gallons filling this bed, 4 cycles in an hour effectively cycles the complete 88 gallons that are in the system through the grow bed once per hour, and that's the ideal rule of thumb, is to have your water turnover at least once per hour in your aquaponics system. So as this is filling, I'm watching the level and see how close it's getting down toward that pump, because I've got a little project today. Unfortunately, this fish tank that's in the front here, I accidentally got a drop of PVC cement on the support, and I think you can see here where my finger is that PVC cement weakened the plastic, and it made it crack. So with the full weight of the 55 gallons in here at roughly 8 pounds per gallon of water, you're looking at about 440 pounds, and it's pushing out on this front glass with no center support left, and it's causing a very small leak, probably like 1 drop every 15 seconds or so out of that corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap in a new tank right there. Well, new to me anyway. Paid $60 for a 55 gallon tank. It has a good center support. I'm going to swap it in, and then I'll try to rehab this tank. I'll shore up that corner with some more silicone, and I'll find something else to brace this center bar here. And that way I'll have a nice backup tank. And my idea here, what I'm going to do, since this grow bed holds approximately 22 gallons worth of water, I'd rather wait until this grow bed is almost completely filled with that 22 gallons just before it trips the bell siphon, because then I'll have 22 gallons worth of water trapped in here, and that's roughly 176 pounds worth of water that I'm not going to have to deal with when I'm trying to swap these tanks. Then the sump tank will be empty in the back, or at least empty down to maybe 8 gallons worth, and I can fit 22 gallons from this front tank. I can use the pump to pump it into the sump tank. So then I'm starting out with 22 gallons less in this 55, brings me down to about 33 gallons. And then what I can do is pump half the water off of this front tank, and I'll put it into the new tank. That way there will roughly be about 16 to 17 gallons in each tank, and that's much more manageable. As you see, I've got to get it down this lip. It's a couple inches off the ground, and of course I don't want to break any tanks, and I don't have anybody around here to help me. So 16 gallons, we're looking at 128 pounds plus the weight of the tank, maybe another 50 pounds, so a little bit more manageable, especially when I can leave part of the tank sitting on the wood and the other part of the tank move to the floor, and slowly move one off and get it down, and then get the other tank on. And then of course the water that's in the old tank, I'll pump it into the new tank, and then the sump tank will be full, so then I'll pump water out of it, and then it'll eventually drop down and fill up the new tank. So the 88 gallons isn't going anywhere, and I don't want it to, frankly. The grow bed's well cycled. I've been using some feeder fish to eat and poop in the water for several weeks now, about 6 weeks. All the readings look good as far as ammonia and nitrates and nitrites. pH is good. So everything's really good, and I have tilapia coming in literally a day, and then I discover this leak. So trying to swap tanks without losing all that nice cycled, well set water as I have these tilapia coming in. So I think what I'm going to do is pause the video here, and then I'll let you guys see when the tank, the the ball siphon in the center of the grow bed there gets triggered and cycles the water down into the fish tank, and then show you how it goes into the sump tank. Okay, so the bell siphon just kicked on. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to mark the side of this tank so I know what height level that kicked on. I'm just using a blue crayon here. But you can hear that in the background, and now you can see. So I've got that single discharge coming from the standpipe, and it's teeing off to individual discharges. You can see the aeration, you can see the bubbles. So that just helps to oxygenate the water for the fish. And then we'll come around the side here. We'll take a look at that overflow box. So you can see that all that water that is just roaring into the main fish tank is coming outside that Weir siphon. So when you get a Weir siphon, they are rated on gallon flow per hour. And I believe I misspoke earlier about my pump. I think I might have said gallon per minute. It's rated at about 300 gallons per hour, but at the height of this grow bed, the pump effectively puts out about 100 gallons per hour. But I made sure that I got an overflow box that had a large enough flow capacity to handle the discharge. So approximately 22 gallons of water is coming back out of that grow bed in about 3 minutes is what the drain time takes. So I just calculated that out over the space of an hour to come up with what that flow rate was, and I made sure that I got a Weir siphon overflow box that could accommodate that flow rate. So again, we've got the water coming up from the sump tank. Again, it's flowing approximately 100 gallons per hour. It's filling this grow bed, which is 54 inches by 24 inches roughly. Some of that space, again, is going to be taken up by this food grade liner here. And also a good portion of water on your initial pass through is going to get absorbed by these expanded shell or whatever your grow media is. Whatever grow media you're using, you want to make sure you find out what the absorption rate, in this case, like I said, with the expanded shell, it was about 38% of its weight in water. So what I did was I took the total weight of the rocks that I had put in, and I multiplied it by 38% and got a weight in water, and then I divided that by approximately 8 gallons, and that told me approximately how many gallons these stones were going to absorb. And so I had to just go ahead and make sure to put that much extra water into the system. So along with the 88 gallons of water that are in the fish tank, as well as the sump tank in the back there, that's 88 gallons. There's another maybe 12 gallons or so that are in the system, but constantly absorbed into the rock, so it's not free water in the system. So again, the water is going to come up, it's going to fill the grow bed, it's going to hit the bell siphon, and then it's going to drop it down, and you see that the draining is pretty much complete right there. So it took roughly 3 minutes or so, maybe 3.5 minutes for that draining to complete. You'll see water still is draining a little bit into the sump tank in the back here. But that's essentially how this system works. It's a nice footprint. It all fits on a cart that you can move around, and so we'll be able to grow a decent amount of vegetables in here. This light, if anybody's interested in trying it, the name is Bestva. It's their 1000 watt equivalent DC, which means dual chip. It is a full spectrum light. It runs about $129 on Amazon. It is exceptionally bright. We've only had these peppers in maybe about a week, and now that they've settled from the trauma of getting moved over, starting to see some new growth, especially on this little guy here. You can see some new leaves starting right by my finger there, coming out the top. So, and this one was pretty much, we thought it was going to be dead, and it's really come back to life nicely. in the aquaponic system. So other than that, I'm going to wait for the next cycle, or just before the next cycle, so that I can transfer all this water around and make this tank swap a little bit easier. But I hope I've provided some useful information for everybody. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. More than happy to help out anybody with how to put something like this together. Take it easy.